Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Picture Mavericks. Before we begin, an important note. The perks of being a wallflower deals seriously and directly with childhood sexual abuse, PTSD, depression, and mental health crisis. This video covers all of those themes fully and honestly. If you or someone you know is dealing with any of these issues, please reach out to a trusted person or a mental health professional. These things are real, and they deserve real support. Now, with that said, let us get into it. Today we're talking about The Perks of Being a Wallflower, released in 2012, written and directed by Steven Chbosky, who also wrote the original 1999 novel the film is based on, which makes this one of the rare cases where the author of the source material also directed the adaptation. The film stars Logan Lerman as Charlie, Emma Watson as Sam, and Ezra Miller as Patrick, and was produced by Summit Entertainment. It made over $33 million worldwide on a budget of $13 million. And in the years since its release, it has become one of the most beloved and most discussed coming-of-age films of its generation. Now here is what I want you to understand before we go any further. The Perks of Being a Wallflower is not a high school film. It is not a film about finding your people or discovering music or learning to be yourself, although all of those things happen in it. It is a film about a 15-year-old boy who was sexually abused by someone he loved and trusted, who has buried that experience so completely that he does not consciously remember it, and who is living with the full weight of that trauma in every single scene without understanding where the weight comes from. Every choice Charlie makes, every relationship he forms, every moment of disconnection, and every moment of unexpected breakdown, all of it flows from that buried reality. And the film tells you this, not with a sudden revelation, but with a pattern of behavior that accumulates slowly and inevitably toward the truth. That is what we're going to follow today. Before we get into Charlie's story, I want to spend a moment on why this film is significant in a broader sense, because I think it is genuinely unusual in how it handles its subject matter. Films about trauma, particularly childhood trauma, tend to fall into one of two approaches. The first is the external approach, where trauma is treated as a backstory that explains a character's behavior, revealed at a dramatic moment, processed in a single cathartic scene, and essentially resolved by the end. The second is the clinical approach, where mental illness is depicted from the outside as something that happens to a person and is observed by others, rather than something that is experienced from the inside. The Perks of Being a Wallflower does neither of those things. It puts you inside Charlie's experience completely, in his letters, in his narration, in the way the camera stays close to his face and his reactions, and it shows you trauma not as a backstory or a diagnosis, but as a continuous present tense reality, something that is happening to Charlie in every scene, shaping every perception and every relationship, without him or the audience having the full vocabulary for it yet. This is a much harder thing to do and a much more honest one. And the fact that Chbosky both wrote the novel and directed the film means there is a continuity of understanding about Charlie that shows in every scene. Charlie begins the film writing letters to an unnamed friend, someone he has never met, someone he chose specifically because he heard they were good and kind and would not judge him. And this detail is the first thing the film tells you about who Charlie is. He needs to speak, but he cannot speak directly. He needs to be heard, but he cannot risk being truly seen. The letters are a way of existing in relationship with someone while maintaining the safety of distance. And the fact that he chooses a stranger rather than someone who actually knows him tells you immediately that the people who know him represent a kind of danger that strangers do not. Charlie is 15, starting high school, and he has recently lost his best friend Michael to suicide. He has a history of psychiatric treatment. He is described early in the film as someone who thinks too much and feels everything. Logan Lerman plays Charlie with extraordinary precision because the role requires him to communicate simultaneously what Charlie knows and what Charlie does not know about himself. And those are two very different states of being that exist in the same body at the same time. Charlie behaves in ways he cannot fully explain, reacts with disproportionate emotion to specific triggers, dissociates at moments of intimacy, and the performance holds all of that without ever announcing it. He is not a sad boy. He is a boy carrying something that has not yet been named. Sam and Patrick are the two people who changed Charlie's life, and I want to explain what each of them specifically gives him because they're doing different things. Sam, played by Emma Watson, gives Charlie the experience of being genuinely seen and genuinely valued for exactly who he is without any performance or pretense required. She notices him at a moment when he is completely invisible to everyone else. She invites him in without asking him to be different, and she treats his sensitivity and his intelligence as gifts rather than liabilities. For a person who has learned to make themselves small and invisible as a survival strategy, being noticed by someone like Sam is both the best thing that has ever happened to Charlie and one of the most destabilizing, because being seen means being known, and being known means the things he carries might become visible. Patrick, played by Ezra Miller in a performance that is simultaneously the funniest and the most heartbreaking thing in the film, gives Charlie something different, which is permission to exist loudly, to take up space, to be present in a room in a way that Charlie has never allowed himself to be. Patrick is dealing with his own pain throughout the film, a secret relationship that carries its own weight, and his ability to move through the world with humor and bravado while carrying genuine hurt is something Charlie watches and learns from. Together, Sam and Patrick do not fix Charlie. They give him enough safety to start feeling again. And feeling again, for someone who's been numb, is both a gift and the beginning of a crisis. There is a piece of advice that Charlie's English teacher, Mr. Anderson, gives him early in the film, which is that Charlie needs to participate, to stop observing from a distance and actually enter the experiences of his own life. And the film treats this advice seriously while also complicating it, because for Charlie, participation is not simply a matter of confidence or social skill, it is a matter of safety. Watching from the outside is not a personality trait for Charlie. It is a defense mechanism. When you have experienced something that happened to you when you were not able to stop it, when your body was used in ways you did not consent to, one of the most common responses is to develop a relationship with the world that keeps you at a slight remove, observing rather than inhabiting, present but not fully there, because being fully there means being fully vulnerable, and fully vulnerable is where the worst thing happened. Charlie's wallflower quality, which the title names and which the film explores throughout, is not shyness. It is the specific watchfulness of a person who has learned that the world inside other people's reach is not always safe. His gradual movement toward participation, towards Sam and Patrick and friendship and music and feeling, is genuinely brave in a way that the film understands and respects, because it is not just social courage. It is the particular courage of someone learning to trust again after the trust was broken at the most fundamental level. The tunnel scene is the most famous moment in The Perks of Being a Wallflower, and it deserves careful attention because it is doing something very specific that is easy to receive emotionally without fully understanding analytically. Charlie, Sam, and Patrick are driving through a tunnel at night. Sam stands up in the back of the truck, the wind is in her hair, David Bowie's Heroes is playing, and Charlie experiences a moment of complete presence, of feeling infinite, of being entirely inside his own life rather than watching it from a distance. That moment, for Charlie, is not just happiness. It is the first time in the film, possibly in a long time, that he has felt his own existence as something worth being inside rather than something to be managed and endured from a safe distance. The tunnel is a visual metaphor that the film uses deliberately. You enter the dark and emerge into something that feels like light. You pass through the constricted and arrive at the open, and the feeling of that transition at speed with people you love and music that reaches you. That is what the film is capturing. And the reason it lands with such force is that we have spent enough time with Charlie by this point to understand exactly what it costs him to be that present, and to feel what it means that he got there, even briefly, even just for this one moment in a tunnel at night. Music in The Perks of Being a Wallflower is not background. It is communication. And the way Charlie relates to music tells you something essential about how he processes experience. Mr. Anderson gives Charlie books throughout the film, not as assignments but as gifts, as a way of saying here is a language for what you are feeling, and Charlie receives them as exactly that. But music functions similarly and more immediately, because music does not require the mediated distance of reading. It arrives directly and physically and bypasses the careful management that Charlie applies to most of his emotional life. The mixtape that Charlie makes for Sam is one of the most revealing things he does in the entire film, because selecting music for someone is an act of emotional exposure. It is saying, here is what I feel, and I do not have the words, but maybe this does. And Charlie doing it for Sam is his most direct declaration of what she means to him before he is able to say it in any other way. The film's soundtrack is built with this understanding. Every song that appears in the film is doing emotional work that the dialogue is not doing. And if you pay attention to what is playing in any given scene, you will find that the music is usually naming the thing that Charlie cannot name himself. As the film progresses, Charlie begins experiencing dissociative episodes, moments where he loses time or loses the thread of where he is and what is happening. And the film presents these as symptoms rather than plot devices, which is exactly the right choice. Dissociation is one of the most well-documented psychological responses to childhood trauma. The mind's way of protecting itself from memories and sensations that are too overwhelming to process consciously, by essentially removing the person from the present moment until the threat of overwhelming feeling passes. Charlie's dissociative episodes cluster around specific triggers, physical intimacy, moments of intense emotion, situations that unconsciously echo the original trauma, and the film is careful to show you the pattern even before it shows you what the pattern is pointing toward. There is a scene where Charlie kisses Sam during a game of spin the bottle and immediately dissociates, seeing something that is not there, and the film presents this without explanation because Charlie himself has no explanation for it. He experiences the symptom without the memory that would give it context. This is trauma depicted with real clinical accuracy, and it is one of the things that separates this film from most treatments of similar subject matter, because it shows you the mechanism of suppressed trauma, the way the body remembers what the conscious mind has hidden, before it shows you what is being suppressed. Aunt Helen is Charlie's favorite person in the world for most of the film. She is spoken of with enormous love and grief. She died in a car accident on the way to buy Charlie his birthday present when he was a child, and her absence is one of the losses that Charlie carries most visibly. And then the film reveals what has been true the whole time. Aunt Helen sexually abused Charlie when he was very young. She abused him repeatedly. She told him it was their secret, and she died before he was old enough to have any framework for understanding what had been done to him. And Charlie, in the absence of any adult who helped him name or process what happened, and in the presence of the genuine love he also felt for his aunt alongside the abuse, buried the memory so completely that by the time we meet him it is not consciously accessible to him at all. What remains is not the memory but the damage, the dissociation, the difficulty with intimacy, the watchfulness, the instinct to make himself invisible, all the symptoms of something that his conscious mind has sealed away. The revelation of Aunt Helen is not presented as a shock twist. It is presented as a tragic and inevitable truth that the film has been building toward with every scene, and once you know it, you cannot watch any earlier moment in the film without seeing it differently. The trigger for Charlie's breakdown is a moment of physical intimacy with Sam, and the film handles this with real care. Sam and Charlie have a final moment together before she leaves for college. It is tender and real, and something they both genuinely want. And in the middle of it, Sam touches Charlie in a way that unconsciously echoes how Aunt Helen touched him, and the suppressed memory begins to surface. Charlie dissociates completely. He loses the present moment entirely. He calls his sister, and his words are confused and frightened, and he is clearly not fully in the real world. And by the time his parents find him, he is in full mental health crisis. The breakdown is not dramatic in the way that breakdowns are often depicted in films. It is quiet and terrifying and completely realistic. A person whose mind has been holding something unbearable finally losing the ability to hold it. The suppression failing not because Charlie chose to remember, but because the body insisted. He is hospitalized, and the film treats this not as a failure or a collapse, but as the necessary thing that needed to happen. The point at which the thing he has been carrying finally becomes visible to the people around him and to himself, and where the possibility of actual healing, rather than managed survival, begins. The hospital section of the film is handled with a restraint that I think is one of the most important choices Chbosky makes in the entire script. He does not show you the therapy sessions. He does not show you the moment Charlie consciously remembers what happened with Aunt Helen. He does not dramatize the recovery process as a series of breakthroughs, because that is not what recovery actually looks like. What he shows you is Charlie before the hospital and Charlie after the hospital. And the difference between those two versions of the same person is what the film uses to communicate what the recovery contained. The Charlie who went into the hospital was a boy carrying a weight he did not know he was carrying, navigating the world with the specific, careful watchfulness of someone whose internal landscape was full of things he could not look at directly. The Charlie who comes out is not healed in any complete sense. He is not suddenly free of what happened to him. He is not a different person, but something has shifted at a fundamental level, because the thing that was buried has been named, and a thing that has been named can be worked with in a way that a thing that is buried cannot. The film understands that naming the trauma is not the same as resolving it, but it is where resolution becomes possible. The film returns to the tunnel at the end, and the return is the most precisely calibrated moment in the entire script. Charlie is in the truck with Sam and Patrick again, the same road, the same tunnel, and Sam stands up again, and Charlie stands up too this time, and the wind is in both their faces as they come through the tunnel into the open air. Charlie stood up. That is the whole ending. That single action, Charlie participating rather than watching, Charlie in the experience rather than outside it, Charlie present in his own life rather than observing it from behind glass. That is what the film has been working toward for its entire runtime. And it lands with the force it does because the film has been honest about what it cost Charlie to get here, about everything he carried and everything he lost and everything that was done to him, and the long, difficult road from carrying something unnamed to having it named to being, tentatively and carefully and genuinely, here. The tunnel at the beginning was Charlie feeling infinite for a moment before retreating back to safety. The tunnel at the end is Charlie choosing to stay. So let us bring it all together. The Perks of Being a Wallflower is a film about one truth that runs underneath every scene and every relationship and every song and every letter. And that truth is this: trauma does not disappear because it is buried. It lives in the body and the behavior and the patterns of connection and avoidance long after the conscious mind has sealed it away. And the path towards something like healing begins not with forgetting, but with naming. And not alone, but in the presence of people who see you clearly and stay anyway. Charlie survives not because he is strong in the way that word is usually used. He is not tough or resilient in any conventional sense. He is in fact one of the most fragile characters in recent cinema. He survives because Sam sees him, because Patrick includes him, because Mr. Anderson gives him language, because his family, imperfect and sometimes absent, but genuinely present at the moments that matter, does not abandon him when the crisis comes. The film is saying that the people who witness us, who see the real shape of what we are carrying and do not look away, are not peripheral to recovery. They are the condition of it. My personal view on this film is that it is one of the most honest and most carefully constructed films about trauma and mental health that mainstream cinema has produced, and it achieves that honesty because Chbosky, who lived inside this story for years before putting it on screen, never simplifies it, never resolves it too cleanly, and never asks you to feel better about Charlie's situation than the situation actually warrants. It is a difficult film in the way that true things are sometimes difficult, and it is a necessary one. Most people who watched The Perks of Being a Wallflower felt something they could not fully name. Now you know exactly what the film was holding. Thank you for watching Picture Mavericks. And if this breakdown gave you something new to think about, consider subscribing because we go deeper so you do not have to. See you in the next one.